Good evening, one and all. My name is Richard Joy. I'm the Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute, or ULI Toronto. This dinner is really annually a great expression about what the Urban Land Institute is all about. And that is to bring the broadest array of real estate and land use professionals together across both the private and public sectors to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and to creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. And tonight is especially about the public sector side of that equation. The Meet the Chiefs Planners Dinner is designed to celebrate our senior civic planners whose leadership literally shapes this region. Attendees from last year's dinner will recall that we featured the author and journalist Doug Saunders, who challenged our region to play a larger role in a more ambitious growth trajectory for Canada. This year, we seek to explore how we can further advance the province of Ontario's transit-oriented community goals at the local level, especially in view of the significantly improved regional transportation service levels that we're experiencing. With over 40 public sector leaders in attendance tonight, I'm not going to introduce them all individually, but I would like to ask that you all stand up to be recognized. Please. Our chiefs. I would also like to thank our 30-plus table sponsors whose generous support has us hanging the sold-out sign on this event over a month and a half ago. Unbelievable. We're just showing their names, but they will come up again later over the course of the evening. But we're really grateful for your support. Without it, this event would not be such a success. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to our dinner sponsor, WSB, for their continued support of this event, and the City of Brampton. The City of Brampton, and you're gonna understand better why a little bit later in the program, but amazingly have joined us as one of our panel sponsors as well, or as our panel sponsor after dinner. So thank you to Brampton. And finally, a very special thanks to our presenting sponsor, the GTAA, or better known as Pearson Airport, who've supported this event since its inception. Thank you very much. High five. It is now, and this is an understatement, my distinct honor to invite Stacey Laforme, Chief of the Mississaugas of the New Credit Nation, to deliver this year's welcoming. We're very pleased to have you. Chief Laforme.
Okay, so we're all being rude tonight. Nobody's shaking hands, I saw. So I'm just letting everybody know that from now on, there's no tapping toes and there's no clicking elbows. It's all. So get used to it. It's going to take over the country. So I heard there was a Chiefs meeting here, so I figured I'd. It's a nice name, but you can keep it. see, my name is Gima or Ogama, so that's what they call us for head person or speaks for the people or something. And actually, Chiefs was a name that was just designated onto us over time. So really, you're more entitled to it than I am. So, but I can say that to you, but I don't know how it'll go over if you do that to AFN or something like that. I'm the chief around here. So, I know what you're thinking. That's a nice shirt that man's got on. That's right. I don't know if all of you saw the back, but I'll give you a shot. That's right. I'd just like to say that The longer I'm up here, the more some of you men in the audience are going to think that, and lean over and say, I think I could pull that off. No. So, Ani, Bazu, Nagani, and Nishtabeki Nini, Station Forum, Disneycause, Credit Dunjaba, Mainga Dodam, Mississauga, Anishinaabe Dow. I just told you where I'm from, what my name is, what my clan is. You see, my mother was a Mohawk from Six Nations, so they follow the mother side for the clan. So if I follow that, I'd be the Wolf clan. And my father's an Ojibwe, and they follow the father side now. And so if I follow that, I'd be a turtle. I choose the wolf because I'm sexy. I'm joking. I always have to, I think I'm pretty safe, but I usually always have to say if there's any turtles in the audience, you're very lovely. So I acknowledge the creator of the world around us and our place within it. I acknowledge the many nations that have walked this land in the past, those who walk it today, and welcome you to the lands and the treaty lands of the Mississaugas. We have lived upon this land for thousands of years. We have welcomed other nations among us. We have made friends and agreements, and we have fought other nations to protect this land and our way of life. We were not always known as Mississauga. We were and are Ojibwe and Anishinaabe. We were always here, and here we will remain. It is important to remember that as the treaty holders, that without us, you or your families might not be here. Then again, knowing some of the things in our history, it might be me that's not here. So it's important to remember that treaty alliance that we have between us. Now, I'd like to open with a prayer, if I could. I wrote it down because I'm getting old. We give thanks to the Creator for allowing this gathering. We ask that He guide us and forgive us when we falter and disappoint. For though we aspire to greatness, we are, after all, only human. Grant us a clear mind, a pure heart, and courage. A clear mind to make intelligent and well-thought-out decisions. A pure heart to make decisions without personal bias and desire. And the courage to use both, a clear mind and a pure heart in our lives. Let us set aside small differences. Let us concentrate on real issues. Let us not be bogged down in rhetoric. Let us live each day with a feeling of accomplishment and pride. Most importantly, let us remember we are not adversaries nor are we enemies. We share a similar past, a kindred spirit, and a common heritage. We must always remember the real reason we gather, to do the right thing for our people, our children, and our future. So I'm honored to be here to speak to the people who do the planning. Those who work hard and make sure that everything is just right. Where when something goes wrong, it's never the chief's fault. Right? Come on. That's not the way in my community. When something goes wrong, it's always my fault. But I'm honored to be here, and I'm pretty sure that you must remember the connection to the earth that you have. Otherwise, how could you do justice to what you do? Because there's always got to be a part of it. Your connection to the world and the world around you, and the understanding of where that begins. That would allow you to do your job a lot more thoroughly. And I'm sure many of you recognize that. A lot of people think that the Anishinaabe or the indigenous people are here to help with climate change and save the world and things like that. But it's not our job. Our job is to help you reconnect to the world around you so you'll have that understanding that you once had. So you'll understand that at one point in time, you knew the value of this earth and your ancestors knew it. But over time, we have just forgotten. And our role is simply to help you remember so that with the many gifts we all bring to the table, that we all play a part in making sure that we do our best to save the planet. Now, I'm going to sort of bring you down because this is a poem called Mother that I wrote some time ago about Mother Earth from what I would say is Mother Earth's perspective, and it's about what happens if we don't do better. And there was a time when I thought that it doesn't matter if we fail as human beings, that the earth will go on and we'll just be gone and it'll find a way to regrow and renew. But I realized one thing you can say about humanity: we will not go easily. We will do everything we can think of, any geoscience we can imagine. We will use that at the last moment to try and save ourselves. And in those moments, we'll ensure that the world we leave behind will not go on without us. So I leave you this poem. It's called Mother. Why do you hurt me when I have nothing but love for you? I have seen you crawl from the dark into the light. I have watched you learn to walk and then to fly. I have seen you squabble and fight. I have cheered for you, and I have feared for you. I give freely of what is mine to give, yet you take more than I am able. You hurt me. More and more you ignore my pain and my cries. I am ancient, but I am not immortal. I have a time. Why do you seek to rob me of it? Through the years I have been here for you and yours, for your grandmothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers. I would stay to see your children raise their children, but I cannot, for I am dying. I do not measure the passing of time as you do. Nevertheless, I know my time is coming, and it is soon. I love you, my children, but I fear I will fail you. And even though you have failed me first, anger is not in me, for I was created of love, as were you. Therefore, the toughest part of goodbye is knowing that you cannot go on without me, that your time will end far too soon, and no one will know. This great journey, this grand adventure called humanity, will be undone as if it never existed. I will care for you as long as I am able. Yet when the rivers no longer flow, when the trees die, when the wind rages and the storms come, know that it is not my anger. It is the end of the love I can no longer give, the love you can no longer take. It is my end, and sadly, it is yours. You can applaud. I know it's sad, but the poem was pretty good. Come on. So I want to say that, we have to understand that in this world where things are happening every day, the world changes, some good, more bad, but all challenging. And even climate change is not an individual duty to fight. It's all of us, and we're all in this together. The understanding that Mother Earth is an entity, a soul, a spirit, and that kind of thinking changes the whole dynamic of who you are if you can get into that mindset. And it crosses lots of boundaries of your life. So since I'm probably only going to see you as ever once more, individually, I don't think you'll ever come and visit me in Mass or invite me back, but... So I have one more thing I'm going to read you. And I don't know if you know it, but I'm starting to get a hint that I'm sort of a talker. And you see, I just had a birthday, and I'm old enough now that I get to tell stories. I don't have to just say facts anymore. It's accepted and expected now in my culture. So I wanted to read you one more poem, if I could. It's called On Common Ground. And I'll explain it after I'm done. No one thing can define us, for we are complex creatures dreamed in the mind of the Creator. We laugh when we should cry. We cry when we should laugh. We joke when in pain. We smile because tears could consume us. We love unconditionally and totally. We understand that family should come first, yet family is not defined solely by blood. We are quick to anger, yet no one forgives faster. We are loyal and we are strong. When we commit, we are unwavering. We have survived much, but do not mistake adaptation for resignation. You will always see us, for we will always be here, standing for what we believe in, standing beside each other, doing what is right for our children, our future. We remember our obligation to our Mother the Earth, and we remember our place upon her. We are a proud people, an honorable people. We do not always do right, for we are human and prone to the follies of humanity. Yet we strive to be better, to make each other better, to make the world a better place for the children. I know the Creator smiles upon us no matter where we are or what we do, for the love of a child is unconditional. No matter where life takes you, walk proud. Thank you. So people be happy I'm putting the phone away. So I read that to you because I think that everybody can see some part of themselves in that poem, and that teaches us that no matter how far apart we may seem, we're never so far apart that we can't find common ground. And that's where we need to begin. Jima Gwitchin, thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Chief LaForme. I'd invite all of you to proceed with your salad while we carry on with the proceedings up here. Chief LaForme, your presence with us tonight is indeed an honor. Your words are a very important reminder to us at ULI that when we speak about advocating for the responsible use of land, we need to understand the deeper meanings of the words responsible, use, and land. Canada's First Nations have much to teach us in this regard. To that end, ULI is deepening its commitment to exploring and respecting our relationships with our region's Indigenous people in this important era of Canadian history. We continue to seek your guidance in this journey. My name is Les Klein. I am a co-founder and principal of Quadrangle Architects, as well as the chair of ULI Toronto District Council. On behalf of the ULI Management Committee, which is our board of directors, it's my pleasure to join Richard Joy and welcome you all to our 6th annual Meet the Chief Planners dinner, which will be my last as ULI chair. This is a huge year for the Toronto District Council as we prepare to play host for the first time to a major North American ULI conference, the 2020 Spring Meeting. Over 4,000 attendees from all over the world are expected to come to our region. And this conference will play a very large role in putting our urban region into the international spotlight. We have a short video to share with you about what we have to look forward to. Can we have the video? So I want to assure you all, blown kisses, fist pumps, elbow rubs notwithstanding, that as of today, ULI International remains committed to proceeding with the spring meeting, even in the face of the COVID-19 situation. We are all, of course, hoping for the best, and at the same time planning how we will deal with any circumstances that may arise. It is indeed an exciting time for our region and our industry, both of which are at the forefront of building an urban metropolis of the future, a future that is greener, more mobile, more affordable, and more socially inclusive. Achieving the vision of more transit-oriented communities is an essential building block to these objectives, so we are pleased to have Ministers Mulroney and Sharma tonight with us, both of whom will be introduced to you more formally shortly. I would also like to acknowledge several elected representatives who have chosen to join us tonight, for which we are honored and grateful. Please hold your applause until I've completed reading their names. Councillor Godwin Chan from Richmond Hill, Councillor Keith Irish from the City of Markham, Councillor Karen Ray from the City of Markham, and from the City of Toronto, Councillor Jennifer McKelvey, Councillor Paul Ainsley, Councillor Brad Bradford, and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Anna Balayo. And now, to introduce Minister Mulroney, I will ask Chris Terrell, Vice President of Planning, Landscape and Design for WSP, our Meet the Chief Planners dinner sponsor, to take the podium. Chris?
Thank you, Les, and good evening. It's a great pleasure for WSP to join with ULI again this year for this important celebration of the region's public sector planning leadership. As a global company, WSP partners with public sector leadership around the world, giving us a perspective and appreciation for the legacy and future vision of the Greater Golden Horseshoe as the fastest growing urban region in North America and Europe. This evening's focus on transit-oriented communities is a great example of our region's leadership, bringing a future aimed at developing high-quality, truly urban neighborhoods across the Greater Golden Horseshoe for existing and future transit-oriented development network. To this end, I'm very pleased to present the Honorable Caroline Mulroney, Minister of Transportation and of Francophone Affairs. Minister Mulroney was first elected as a member of Provincial Parliament for York Simcoe in 2018, whereupon she was appointed as Ontario's Attorney General. In June of 2019, she was appointed as Minister of Transportation. Minister Mulroney has been focused on getting people where they want to go when they need to get there. Supported by a historic partnership with the City of Toronto in the fall of 2019, Minister Mulroney oversaw the province of Ontario's $23.5 billion investment program in 4 priority transit projects, an ambitious expansion of the GO Rail network, and the development of regional transportation plans across the province. Minister Mulroney also serves as Minister of Francophone Affairs. In this role, she concluded an agreement with the federal government to finance l'Université d'Ontario Français, Ontario's first university that will be governed for and by Francophones. Before entering politics, Minister Mulroney had a career in business and law. She served as Vice President of Bloomberg Sen Investment Partners, a Toronto-based investment firm, and she spearheaded corporate and regulatory matters related to the growth opportunities in Canada and the United States for Wellington Financial LP. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Caroline Mulroney.
I was going to give you a fist pump, but you ran off too quickly. You're already ready for staying far away from people. Well, thank you, Chris, very much for that very kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here this evening. A friend of mine who goes to a lot of events like this told me that this is the best event like this. And so I'm very pleased to come and check it out, learn what your special sauce is, and see if I can get myself an invitation back next year. Bonsoir tout le monde, je suis ravie d'être ici ce soir. Merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité. As I look around the room, I see planners, public servants, and private and nonprofit city planners. All people who are dedicated to building thriving and sustainable communities. And I can't help but feel like the future of our province is in great hands. Your deep understanding of the vital link between transportation planning and urban planning has been critical to our government's efforts of building the Toronto of the future. Smart transportation planning is about more than just getting people from A to B. It's intrinsically connected to economic opportunities, livable communities, and overall quality of life. And it's more important than ever to get it right. As you heard, 8 months ago, Premier Doug Ford appointed me Minister of Transportation after giving me the honor of serving as Ontario's Attorney General for a year. And it has truly been an honor. I got into politics to be part of the team that dedicated itself to turning Ontario around. So I was thrilled to be asked to lead an exciting portfolio, especially one of the key engines to the movement of goods and people in our province. And it's been a very busy time. It's been a busy time for me personally. I have received a lot of invitations since I was appointed Minister of Transportation. I think just about every single member of the legislature has invited me to their riding to see a bridge, a road, even a culvert. And so it did not take me long to conclude that the Minister of Transportation is a lot more popular than the Attorney General. But I tell Doug Downey, my friend and colleague, that it is completely portfolio dependent and has nothing to do with personality. But in all seriousness, with this appointment, I realized that I was being given an opportunity to be part of making tremendous changes to the future of the Greater Toronto Area, and for the better. The GTA is leading all of Canada in economic, population, and job growth. But our infrastructure simply has not kept pace. We have fallen behind other major cities, and it's simply unacceptable. I truly believe that we are at a critical point in Ontario's transportation history, and especially right here in the GTA. With more than 1 million people expected to move into this region in the next 10 years, the next decade will be truly transformational. And I often hear about the productivity-killing congestion that people face on their way to and from work each day. And I feel it in my own family. My personal well-being and that of my husband is tested on a regular basis. We have 4 kids, and we shuttle them to and from activities on a constant basis, day and night, to and from hockey and dance and theater. And as a parent, I love the time that I spend in the car with my kids. If you have children, you know time in the car with your kids can actually be quality time. But the quality of that time is diminished by the increasing traffic and the congestion across the GTA, and it should not be so. I say thank goodness for carpools, but as Minister of Transportation, I can do just a little bit more. All over Ontario, people are suffering because of years of inaction. But that time is over. People are frustrated with our existing transit networks. They're outdated, and they lack the capacity to serve the needs of today, which means that they certainly cannot deal with the expected growth over the next few decades. Each year we lose billions of dollars due to gridlock. And without smart investments in our transportation and our transit networks, we risk allowing our region's productivity to fall into decline. And so we need to think differently and to take bold steps if we are going to meet the demands of the future. And under our government, it's happening. We are making historic investments in transit infrastructure that will help people spend less time commuting to and from work and spend more time enjoying quality time with their friends and their families. As you know, our new subway transit plan announced last spring includes a commitment to deliver the Ontario line, a new 15.5-kilometer long subway as early as 2027, and 3 extensions by 2029 and 2031. It is the single largest subway expansion in Ontario's history. Building more transit is critical to unlocking gridlock, relieving congestion, and generating long-term economic and employment opportunities. These 4 projects will increase the length of Toronto's subways by 50%, and they will create more stations, which will create more walkable cities and transform the network into one that the people of this city can be proud of. And last fall, Premier Ford and Mayor Tory announced the historic Ontario-Toronto Transit Partnership, ending years of political deadlock and delivering one single unified plan for subway expansion in the GTA. We now have an agreement that formalizes our partnership with the City of Toronto, and it lays the foundation for continued collaboration between our 2 governments. It is a very exciting time. But our plan is about more than just building transit. It's also about building transit faster, because we cannot afford to wait any longer. As Albert Einstein once said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And as we've seen over and over again, doing things the same way they've always been done just creates delays and frustration. It's also not fair, because it is local businesses, families, and commuters that are paying the price. And that is why our foot is on the gas. This morning, Premier Ford, Minister Surma, Minister Scott, and I announced the first phase of tunneling work for 2 priority transit projects, the Scarborough Subway Extension and the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension. 2 requests for qualifications were issued through Infrastructure Ontario and Metrolinx, and mark the first step in the procurement process to deliver on the province's commitment to building transit faster, reducing congestion, and connecting people to places and to jobs. And just last month, I introduced the Building Transit Faster Act, legislation that, if passed, will cut bureaucratic red tape and remove the roadblocks that have held up projects in the past. Le mois dernier, j'ai présenté la loi sur la construction plus rapide du transport en commun. Un projet de loi qui, s'il est adopté, permettra de réduire les formalités administratives et d'éliminer les obstacles qui nuisent encore à la réalisation des projets. For example, we should know if someone is building on our planned transit corridors. By requiring that these projects work in coordination with the development of our priority projects, we can prevent delays. We've also signed memoranda of understanding with our utility partners, Toronto Hydro, Hydro One, and Enbridge, to expedite utility relocations within prescribed timeframes so that we can build faster. Under our proposed plan, We will modernize the province's authority to assemble project lands and minimize the prospect for delays in this process. And all the while, we will continue to treat landowners fairly. Complementary updates to the environmental assessment regulations on the priority projects currently posted for consultation would accommodate more innovation. And I want to be clear. This does not mean that we will be relaxing any environmental protections. We are simply improving the speed and the efficiency of the process. Taken together, these proposed changes could save years in delivering on our priority projects. And if passed, they will help us meet our ambitious timelines to deliver these projects. And speaking of doing things differently, why would we just build transit stations when we can spur the development of more complete communities as well? As part of our plan, we're committed to building transit-oriented communities to do exactly that. Dans le cadre de notre plan, nous sommes déterminés à construire des collectivités axées sur le transport en commun. Partnering with industry to build higher density, mixed-use developments connected to transit stations will create more dynamic, livable communities, and it is also smart urban planning. And I probably don't need to tell you here that. These types of developments will increase transit ridership, and they will reduce congestion. They will create jobs and a mix of housing, including affordable housing. Our partnership with the Woodbine Entertainment Group is a great example of how we are doing things differently to deliver transit infrastructure. Together, we will build a new GO Transit rail station along Highway 27 near Woodbine Racetrack on the Kitchener GO Rail line. This partnership is expected to save taxpayers money and bring in an estimated $90 million in revenue over the life of the station for the province. It will also offer opportunities to live and work near a significant employer and entertainment destination, as well as better access to the local community and jobs. It is exactly the type of project we're hoping to bring for the new rapid transit stations in Toronto and in York Region that are part of our subway expansion. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize my colleague, Associate Minister of Transportation, Kinga Surma, who is here with us this evening. Minister Surma has been working tirelessly on developing our strategy for transit-oriented communities. Transit-oriented communities will connect more people's homes and jobs to transit and reduce congestion costs on the flow of goods along our entire transportation network. It's part of our plan to improve our transportation network and to connect people to places right across Ontario. And that plan extends beyond the borders of the City of Toronto. And Minister Surma will have more to say on this critically important initiative a little bit more tonight, but also more importantly in the upcoming weeks. Improving transit means new construction, but it also means improved service. We are improving the transit rider experience. It was just last year that we launched Kids Go Free, a program that allows children under 12 to travel free, meaning more families are now using GO Transit. We introduced daily commuter service from Niagara Falls and St. Catharines to Toronto, and we did so 4 years ahead of schedule. And since last summer, we have delivered 84 new weekly GO Train trips across the Kitchener, Lakeshore East and West, and Stouffville GO Train lines. And we extended 65 weekly trips across the Lakeshore West and Kitchener lines, including reinstating evening train service on the Stouffville line. And we are also working with our freight partners to increase GO Rail service, providing commuters with more flexibility and choice. Since 2018, GO Rail service has increased from nearly 2,000 trips per week to almost 2,400 trips per week. That is a 21% increase in service. The new services that we've added across the GO Transit network make it more reliable and give customers more choices when they are planning their trips. Infrastructure Ontario, through the leadership of my colleague, Minister Laurie Scott, is now procuring a massive GO expansion program that will bring all-day two-way GO service every 15 minutes across core segments of the network. Together with Metrolinx, we're making life easier for Ontarians by shortening commutes, reducing congestion, and leaving more time for what matters most. Right across Ontario, our government is working hard every day to address the unique transportation needs of every region across our province, to connect people to places as part of our plan to build Ontario together. We're developing regional transportation plans that will connect individuals, families, and businesses and make it easier for people to get around, no matter where they live. In January, we released our first draft plan called Connecting the Southwest, and regional plans for Northern and Eastern Ontario, as well as the Greater Golden Horseshoe, are currently underway. These plans all include real, practical transportation improvements that will connect our cities, our towns, our villages, and our hamlets by improving our roads and our highways, improving accessibility, and ensuring bus, rail, and local transit services are as seamless as possible. We will continue to work with municipal partners, Indigenous communities, community leaders, businesses, and transportation experts to deliver transit solutions to fit the needs of each community best. It's a different, and I think a smarter approach to transportation planning. And frankly, it's one that just makes good sense. So as you can tell, our government, under the leadership of Premier Ford, is not afraid to do things differently to deliver the transportation network that our province needs and deserves. We need to innovate and find creative solutions for the challenges that are bearing down on us. And I think that's something that we can all agree on. And that's why forums such as this one are so critical. I know that the conversations and ideas exchanged tonight will be invaluable as we plan for the future of our province. It's by working with our partners that we will be able to deliver on the transit and transportation solutions that are responsive to our province's needs. Mesdames et messieurs, nous prenons des mesures pour favoriser un Ontario en mouvement. Et à l'aide de votre soutien et de vos connaissances spécialisées, nous allons bâtir l'Ontario ensemble. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting Ontario moving, and with your expertise and with your support, we are building Ontario together. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir.
I never thought I'd elbow bump Minister Mulroney, but there you go. Thank you, Minister Mulroney. Your leadership and that of your governments in advancing the transit-oriented communities is competitively positioning our region for the future. And it is exciting to see the response of the regional municipalities here today and industry leaders also here today responding to the massive investments being made into this infrastructure in the long term, but maybe as importantly, if not more importantly, the regional transit service improvements in the short term that you referenced. In shifting the growth paradigm of the Greater Golden Horseshoe towards transit-oriented urbanization, we have become North America's urban leader, and we are establishing a foundation for a lower carbon, more livable, affordable city, which itself is the foundation for a stronger economic future. All of which leads us, we hope, to your dinner conversations on that very topic. And we'll be back after dinner with a transit-oriented communities panel led by the Honorable Kinga Sharma, Associate Minister of Transportation and Minister of the Portfolio, and kicked off by the Order of Canada recipient, internationally renowned urban designer Ken Greenberg. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
I'm Yvonne Young from the City of Brampton Urban Design, and is pleased to kick off our transit-oriented communities program. Picking up on Richard's comments before dinner, it is an exciting fact that the Greater Golden Horseshoe is the leading North American urban region in the development of transit-oriented communities. Our American ULI counterparts are often amazed that at the nearly 120 active construction cranes in our region, that is more than top 2 American cities, Seattle and Los Angeles combined. But what is even more impressive is that most of these cranes are outside of the urban core, representing urbanization across the entire region and a new growth model of urbanizing suburbia. The City of Brampton is pleased to participate in this year's dinner as panel sponsor. Brampton is advancing its council-endorsed Brampton 2040 vision, a bold plan for the future of Brampton that fully embraces the transit-oriented communities agenda of the provincial government as outlined by Minister Mulroney. In our pursuit of the vision, our energy as one of the youngest, most diverse, fastest growing city in Canada, Brampton has committed to make the shift to unlock GO parking lots into complete, walkable, healthy 20-minute neighborhoods. We are transforming Brampton GO into the hub of a global innovation district. We are creating a new urban healthy district to unlock the benefits of the all-day two-way service at Bramalea GO and its iconic proximity to the Pearson International Airport. We are demonstrating how investment in light rail and bus rapid transit are changing the urban world with catalysts such as RioCan Shoppers World and a 220-acre Queen Street East Urban Growth Center. We are also ensuring the first phase of this major transformation, including an urban community hub, so that residents have access to a walkable, co-located set of community facilities, schools, daycares, arts and culture, co-work spaces, and parks on day one. With that, Brampton has been engaging international expertise to inform our work, including our next speaker, Ken Greenberg, a newly announced member of the Order of Canada and a recipient of a University of Toronto honorary doctorate for remarkable contributions in urban design, public realm in urban life, and leading the transformation of Lower Don, Regents Park, Banksway, Sidewalk Labs, and recently Downsville and Markham Center. Ken is the author of Walking Home and Toronto Reborn, and is also my mentor, my friend, and my comrade in arms in this remarkable urban transformation in Brampton and the emerging regional leadership initiative for ULI. Ken will set up our panel discussion on transit-oriented communities that lead to a global region in the making, built by people from all over the world. Without further ado, please join me to give a big round of applause for Ken Greenberg.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for the very kind introduction. I've been asked to just say a few things to set up the panel, which is going to follow. And what I want to do is to call attention to something which is happening in our city region, which is latent. I think we all generally see it and understand it, but I want to put it in a little more sharp focus. The region that we have inherited is essentially oriented to highways. And based on those highways, it spread itself out thinly over thousands of square kilometers. It is one of the fastest growing city regions in the developed world, as has been pointed out. Currently at about 6.35 million, we're growing to 10.2 million by 2046. But until now, we have been largely reliant on the car as the primary means of getting around. The 400 series highways and major arterials have been the locus of growth and development. But now something very significant has happened, and that is that pervasive, not only here, but pretty much everywhere around the world, post-Second World War paradigm has actually tested to failure in very significant ways. It has required for most adults, and Minister Mulroney, I'm glad you enjoy the time in your car with your kids, but what it has done is to force people to do pretty much every daily trip in the car. It's estimated in the US that suburban households generate about 14 trips a day from several adults. It has segregated where we lived from where we worked and when we shopped. It required vast amounts of free or inexpensive parking, the area devoted to parking often exceeding the area devoted to occupied building. So the problems that have arisen, congestion, which we've spoken about, and the toll that they take on people's lives, the impacts on the environment that we've been forced to learn a great deal more about, and finally, user preference among a younger generation who often aspire to actually not owning a car, have forced us to think about this differently. So here's the good news. The infrastructure that Minister Mulroney was describing to make the paradigm shift that we must make is finally arriving. The $50 billion provincial regional transit plan is radically altering the regional map and, more importantly, the way we perceive and navigate the region. Reliable, two-way, all-day GO service will become the armature of the next generation of growth in our region. It is not only about the transit, but it's also the overlay of three provincial policies that are making this possible. The urban growth centers, clearly, which are located at the points where we have stations on the GO line. The Greenbelt, which I don't think many people appreciate, is one of the most significant green protected areas surrounding a major city in the world, which has actually corralled development and forcing us to think more seriously about intensification. And of course, the regional transit plan itself and the investment. So when you put these three things together, what's emerging is a new form of regional city in our region. It is disrupting 3 generations of auto-dependent sprawl and widely dispersed single uses. It will increasingly, the growth will increasingly hug transit lines. So what will it look like? It will be made up of multiple interconnected centers, interconnected by the transit investment. In those centers, the urban fabric will be denser, it will be more compact, it will be mixed, the complete communities that we talk about so often, and walkable. And most importantly, it will be inherently more sustainable, socially, economically, and environmentally. So that's what that pattern looks like. That's a regional city dispersed over the entire area of the Golden Horseshoe with literally dozens of very compact, sustainable, attractive, viable urban places. So here's a sampling of those places. They're emerging in very different ways throughout the Golden Horseshoe. There are literally dozens of them. Sometimes they're grafted onto older pre-existing downtowns. Sometimes they're new centers emerging from complete cloth at new commuter rail stations. Sometimes they're along densifying suburban arterials served by new light rail and bus rapid transit. In many cases, we're seeing traditional malls, I guess we can now call them traditional, they're not that old, and power centers being converted into new neighborhoods. This is also happening in obsolescent industrial sites. So while the examples like the ones that you see here and the many others are still exceptions in a surrounding lower density suburban context, these municipalities are increasingly optimizing almost universally for a more urbanized future. Every one of these is a little different. Each one faces its own unique challenges, but they have some things in common. One of them is we have to make the mobility shift. We have to get out of our cars and change the way we move around the region, and the transit investment is making that possible. Secondly, we have to really get to mixed use to get the complete communities that we're talking about, and we have to deal with some very specific challenges like unlocking the GO parking lots that often occur at transit stations. And we know in the long term, we want to convert those into complete communities, but making the transition is not that easy. A very big issue is one of inclusion and affordability. How do we ensure that these new urban centers make provision for our entire population and are accessible to all? Brampton, which you see up there, where I've been privileged to work with Yvonne and with her colleagues from the city of Brampton, both elected officials and senior staff, is actually a great example. In fact, it's a kind of poster child. 52% born outside Canada, which is similar to the rest of the region. 73% identifying as visible minorities. 20,000 new members of the population every year. So it's growing at an astonishing rate, and that is the reality we're experiencing throughout the region. So the question is, where will those 20,000 people end up? And ideally, they will end up in those denser communities hugging the transit lines. So in the case of Brampton, the actions of the province are actually making this possible. The all-day service at 3 GO stations, bus rapid transit on Queen Street, the LRT coming up here, Ontario to Steeles. And while the province is playing its role, the municipality is also playing its own with the endorsement of Brampton's 2040 vision, and in 2018, a Queen Street precinct plan, which was the image that Yvonne showed you previously. So every one of these examples is contributing to the larger picture. They are becoming the nuclei of growth and spoken hub anchors for a new form of regional city. This is a vast, collective, multi-generational team effort. It requires the cities and regional governments, the provincial and federal governments to play key roles. Clearly, the development industry is a major actor in all this, plus an array of civil society actors and relevant agencies. The challenges are daunting, but I believe we have a potential to be a world leader in this whole area in our region. Our panel of chiefs will elaborate on some of these examples, and I think it is truly exciting to see this transformation occur. So now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our Chief Planner panel moderator, the Honorable Kinga Sharma, Associate Minister of Transportation for the GTA and Minister without Portfolio and MPP for Etobicoke Centre, who will further explore transit-oriented communities that are being led by the municipal planning leadership in Innisfil, Hamilton, and Pickering. Minister Sharma is focused on working with partners to move forward to get people in the GTA moving. This includes working with new transit projects like the new Ontario Line subway project, which has been mentioned, the Scarborough subway extension, the Yonge North subway extension, as well as the underground extension of the Eglinton Crosstown Light Rail Transit line, which will connect to the airport. She is enthused to get people moving faster and more efficiently by making sure transportation projects throughout the province are meeting the needs of travelers and businesses to help boost local economies and create jobs. Her comprehensive knowledge of municipal, provincial, and federal orders of government has allowed her to effectively address transit concerns of Ontarians and local issues within Etobicoke Centre. She came to Canada from Poland when she was 4 years old. As a successful immigrant and Canadian citizen, she understands the challenges that newcomers face when beginning their life in Canada. Minister Sharma holds a degree in public policy, business, and commerce from the University of Guelph, as well as public relations designations from Ryerson University. So please join me in welcoming Minister Sharma.
Thank you very much, Ken, for that wonderful introduction, and I'm so pleased to be here with all of you and, of course, with the participants this evening. Many people have asked me the question, how did we get here? How did we get to start talking about transit-oriented communities? I have been with the Ministry of Transportation since the beginning, since we won the election, and I've worked with two ministers of transportation before that. It has been a long road, even though it's only been a year and a half, but it certainly feels like a long road. And as we developed our transit plan, and as we started to have discussions in terms of implementation, and as Minister Mulroney spoke about enabling authorities and provisions to build faster, the minister and myself started thinking about, well, what about the stations? There are approximately 35 stations that will be on these key priority lines, and we wanted to get it right. Historically, stations in the City of Toronto have been built in isolation, and that was a lost opportunity. So we wanted to create value. We wanted to create complete communities. And one of the questions I always ask myself is, where do people want to live? People want to live near public transit, transit corridors, and transit hubs. And having that accessibility will not only increase ridership, but there's so much more that we can do with the site at hand. So without further ado, I know I'm on a very strict timeline. I will welcome our guests, Steve Robichaud, Director of Planning, City of Hamilton. Welcome. Tim Kane, the Director of Growth, Town of Innisfil. And of course, Katherine Rose, the Chief Planner for the City of Pickering. I want to make sure I'm facing you. Welcome. Thank you very much. And I want to warn the crowd that actually I had an opportunity to speak to all of the members here today. Before the discussion, I wanted to make sure it was as wholesome and engaging as possible. I have prepared a few questions. I hope I don't catch you off guard. Let's begin, and we can start from this end and work our way down. Tell us a little bit about your expertise, your work experience, and what does transit-oriented communities mean to you? You can start.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, my name is Tim Kane, as I've been introduced. I support 7 teams at the town of Innisfil who are responsible for delivering a growing community that we have. I cut my teeth in the private sector, and Innisfil is my first municipal job, which I'm very happy to be at, and very proud to be involved in projects like the one I'm going to talk about tonight. And in terms of what transit-oriented communities mean for myself and for our community, it is an eye-opener. It's the ability to do something different, as we heard tonight, not necessarily different from other global cities that have already gone down this path, but certainly different than the historic patterns that we've had, and how we can introduce some ingredients into that, like placemaking with my planning background, most importantly, and mobility as a service moving forward, and getting people out of their cars.
Stephen?
I'm Steve Robichaud, and I'm the Chief Planner with the City of Hamilton, where I oversee about 80 professional staff responsible for development applications, community planning, and broader policy planning. I've been with the city for about 25 years, and I was instrumental in developing the city's growth management strategy in 2006, which subsequently got translated into our official plans, a new zoning bylaw, and we've been developing secondary plans. From our perspective, the city has been looking at transportation planning and integrating it with our land use planning to create complete communities and transit-oriented development. One of the things that's very important is the way that transit infrastructure can help create the demand and the preconditions under which intensification opportunities can thrive. Once you draw that line on the map that identifies a transit corridor, investment decisions start. And then it becomes very important as to how do we support those investment decisions. We've tried to be proactive in the city of Hamilton. We updated our downtown secondary plan, which contains 2 GO stations. Not only did we put in place new policies and procedures, but we also pre-zoned the entire downtown. So developers can come in, make their application, go straight to site plan approval, and they know the preconditions that they have to meet in order to obtain site plan approval and ultimately get a building permit. As it related to our east-west transit corridor, we also wanted to work with our development community to understand what would be the opportunities along that corridor. We pre-zoned that corridor, we tested it, both from an economic and an architectural point of view, and the zoning conditions are now in place where we're starting to see those investment decisions that lead to revitalization, rejuvenation of other neighborhoods. At the same time, we put in place policies and procedures to protect affordable housing and heritage, which are 2 elements that have been very important based on what we've heard in the community, as well as to allow for small-scale incremental intensification to occur, as well as larger redevelopment to occur.
Katherine?
So I'm Katherine Rose. I'm the Chief Planner with the City of Pickering. I've been with the city actually 36 years now, and the city prided itself in being a suburb. Everybody was leaving Toronto to come to this low-density, uncongested area. I started in policy, so I've gone through a lot of exercises where you saw intense development that was almost on the verge of being built, suddenly disappear because the market demand suddenly shifted. Provincial grants that may have been available for subsidized housing, they went away. To bring us right up to where we are now, we've had a GO station, so for a long time we were the end of the GO. Now it goes further, of course. And we, like Hamilton, when we were an urban growth center, which our mayor and council loved, we got on a process to change the official plan, put a zoning bylaw in place, withholding zones were required. And as we were doing that, we had one developer in particular who was a real champion, and we couldn't do it fast enough for him. They bought an older plaza, and unlike one developer that looked at it and wanted to do 40 townhomes on a big giant cul-de-sac, this developer wanted to do, and has indeed done, 3 high-rise buildings, a number of stacked townhomes, traditional townhomes, and then he went on to purchase another property, and also in the city center, and we're working with him on that as well.
Well, Katherine, I have to say you got ahead of me, because the next question I was going to ask was what are your experiences with transit-oriented communities? If you have had a project in the past that you've been involved with, or a project that has a similar concept, if you could explain to the audience.
Okay, so I will use the one example. It's Chestnut Hill Developments, San Francisco by the Bay. They were starting construction in 2009. It was a pretty slow sell. They had a lot of support politically, a bit of challenge, but we went through everything we could do to support them. It was a very collaborative approach. Once that building was off the ground, we then had a whole series of things happening with the pedestrian bridge was completed from the GO station over to the Pickering Town Center, making the site even more attractive for those using the GO station. So the next building, he put it up for sale, the units out were marketing, and he ended up selling out before he even got to the public. And the third building was the same way. He barely got it out. 2 weeks, he was completely sold out. And then from a construction staging, he's just kept it so he could keep his crew just moving from one building to the next building. It has quite a variety of forms, as I mentioned earlier. It's got some grade-related retail, and it's been a smashing success.
Stephen?
We've seen a lot of interest, especially around the West Harbour GO station in the James Street area in the city of Hamilton. A lot of interest. We have about 11 active development applications right now in the vicinity of that GO station. And what's interesting is all of those developments are what we sort of characterize as that missing middle. They're that 4, 6, and 8-story high buildings, and there's a lot of interest in doing that. They're being marketed and they're being sold on the premise of all-day GO service, and that becomes a very important consideration. You wouldn't allow somebody to build a house or a development if there was no sewer capacity, or that you're saying the sewers will come after you move in. And yet there's that expectation that when people are moving into this development, that higher order rapid transit service will be there to support it. Our zoning instruments sort of are reflective of higher order transit being provided. People are expecting that, and they're actually actively marketing the projects on those GO service or other transit services happening. So it does actually change the speed, the pace, and the intensity of development. And it's helping to create that market conditions for intensification, which meets our other growth plan objectives and targets. So it is very important to the city and the way the pieces are coming together in terms of creating complete communities and city building in Hamilton.
Go ahead. Your turn.
So for Innisfil, the high growth that we're all experiencing in this room and grappling with on a daily basis, that chase for attainable housing and lifestyle had the probability of within a generation, the status quo for growth that we have been accepting of had the ability to essentially wipe that out. So our council heard consistently within the community those features that were important for them and unanimously endorsed a vision called the Orbit, centered around that GO station and the concept of TOC. And we're grateful for that. The previous station model that we had started with Metrolinx allowed us to tinker around the edges a little bit. This new model allowed us to introduce some pretty exciting concepts and do much more with the space that we have available. In one of those blank canvases, there's probably some envy in this room about how much green space we have around that station, but at the same time, a lot of responsibility to get that right. So how do we embed, as I mentioned previously, technology, mobility as a service, and the placemaking pieces, those social pieces of the communities that we need to form into a single vision. And that vision that you see on the screen, as I mentioned, we're at the beginning of this journey, is to guide us when we're literally going to be making thousands of decisions on this project, both big and small, as well as to start us with that consultation with the community as we go through and give that picture that you see some teeth as we move that project forward. And we need to do it differently. Status quo is not going to work. The rate of change and the amount of change that we hear about in terms of 4 million people plus or minus over 25 years is staggering. You add to that technology as well, and how do you do that with a plan where we're trying to look 50 or 100 years in the future and have in excess of 50,000 or maybe 80,000 people within walking distance of that station. So it's not only important to get it right now, but how do we get that right for the longer term so that we can keep taking advantage of this valuable infrastructure?
Minister Mulroney, in her remarks this evening, spoke about our tireless effort to reach two-way all-day GO service. We have made quite significant service improvements on all of our key lines. There's a lot of work to do. We have 29 infrastructure projects across the province of Ontario to get us there. Of course, that takes some time. Do the municipalities and do the planning departments, do they feel a sense of pressure in terms of the expectation two-way all-day go, and also people wanting to reside near the future GO stations, and how are you managing that? You can start.
I'll go first.
I'll keep it interesting.
So for us, it would be easy to fall into that existing model where we become simply a satellite suburb where people are exiting the community to work every day. Right now, 82% of our population leaves our municipality every day. One-way service wouldn't necessarily change that. So, one of the key aspects of that orbit is to integrate not only the residential side and the attainable housing side that we heard about tonight as well, but also those flex spaces that we need for employment and to do that differently. So for us, yes, the orbit will survive. We are closer to the end of the line, so we'll be a little bit longer getting all-day two-way service, but that overall vision, and to get to that vision, is going to very rely on that two-way service to reverse that commute in that pattern and to make our community more complete in the meantime.
Stephen?
In Hamilton's case, it's very important, not in terms of both attracting employers and employees to the city. We have a real renaissance of the creative class. We actually did a zoning change around the station to allow for a film studio to go ahead. So it's about 200,000 square feet, and it's working its way through the process. It's a city-owned property that's being sold to a group that are going to develop it as a film studio. And that studio will need to attract both full-time and part-time employees into the city, and the GO station will facilitate that. With the university and the colleges in Hamilton, we do feel that there's a strong need on that two-way commuting, both in and out of the city of Hamilton. It'll also allow for more flexibility so that people can, they can live in Burlington and use GO service to get to Hamilton, as opposed to having to rely on the private automobile to move around, or to the Centennial Station and further down Niagara. So in Hamilton's case, it's very important.
I'd echo the fact that the all-day two-way service and now the 15-minute service for much of the day to Pickering makes it such an easy decision to say, I'll take the GO train, like coming down here tonight. It means you don't have to watch your watch and think, oh, I've got to get out of my meeting at 10 to 3 because I've got to get the 1-hour GO train like it used to be. So I think it's really made a difference in terms of the attractiveness of diverting people from the private automobile to the to public transit. We actually had an example. We've got a couple of office buildings in the city center, and one of the main tenants, a big employer, wanted to move into Class A office space. So our mayor worked very hard with the Pickering Town Centre, which is the property to the north side of the railway tracks and the GO station, to get a new building built. And at the same time is when they were just landing the pedestrian bridge at the north end. Our mayor got two colleges to join into the building, and at the same time the province was going to build a parking deck on the GO Transit lot, and we said, no, build it on the Pickering Town Centre lot. So it's integrated with the office building and the pedestrian bridge, the colleges, so we did keep that employment in the city center. We'd love more of it, and then we were able to lease, the other building was able to lease up.
Now, I know I only have a few more minutes left, but I wanted to save the best question for last. What are the challenges with the status quo, and why has TOC not been fully implemented across the province of Ontario? You seem like you're eager to answer that question, Tim.
It started with me last time, but the biggest challenge, and we've heard some talk of it tonight, has been providing that certainty that the development community needs. So if we're going to have developers as partners, and we're going to have strategic public funding as well as part of those models, how do we get that certainty that they need to make that investment around the station, and significant investments as well? We know there's no guarantees in life, but what can we do to minimize that risk for the development community and for the municipalities who are trying to put these things together? So that's one of the challenges. The second challenge would be, the rate of change that we're all moving so quickly in this room means that sometimes we find ourselves tripping over each other. So, how do we ensure that the policies are aligned, and how do we ensure that, we have the necessary controls in place to make this happen, and not necessarily overanalyze things until the point of 4 million people is here, and it's too little too late. And, ask yourself sometimes when you're asking about this policy alignment, what's the risk of, relaxing the planning permissions around a major transit station area? Like, This is where we're going to grow. We know that. So how do we recognize that in a progressive fashion and a collective fashion to get development happening around there?
Stephen?
Building on that, I think it's you develop a bit of momentum, and then if you lose that momentum, it's hard to get it back. Investment decisions have to be made, and if they can't deploy their capital in your city, they will deploy it somewhere else, and that becomes a big issue, especially if they start down a certain path, and then for whatever reason, things don't happen to come to fruition, and then people get a little bit jaded about it, and it gets hard to regain that momentum and continue going forward.
I think we find ourselves, because of the many, many layers of agencies that we have to deal with, it can sometimes be a single, a utility that is just slow at doing their work that can hold up a project, crane, swing permissions, what seem like such minor parts of the process can end up sometimes taking months, and that's a big impact. We also, in some parts of the city where we know we're going to have future transit, we're finding landowners still want to just take the quick flip, do a couple of, do street townhomes or condominium townhomes, and you really need to protect that land for the higher density. And so we're running into some challenges there because this is not right here and now, it's the next wave of transportation.
Given that I have 32 seconds left, I want to thank you three for participating with me this evening. And I want to thank all of you in this room and ULI especially. I want to thank you for embracing this new concept, this new vision, this new program. I want to let you know that it certainly wasn't just written down on a napkin. This is something that's been in development for quite a long time, and we are doing our due diligence with speaking to many housing advocates, to job creators, to city builders, consulting with the public, consulting with folks like yourselves. And so I look forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma.
Good evening, Region Builders. I'm Hillary Marshall from Toronto Pearson, and I am your closer for the evening. Simmer down. I'm only going to talk about the airport for 45 minutes or so. It's going to be fine. Congratulations to Richard and the magnificent ULI team for putting together another amazing event. And for Les and Michelle, amazing co-chairs, chair and co-chair of the the executive committee. Come on, we're wrapping up this year, so come on, we did it. We at Toronto Pearson feel that this dinner has become a highlight of a very important dialogue in the region about vitality. Whether we're coming together to talk about transit, land use, or affordability, our ULI community, that's all of you here, is key to helping solve the biggest opportunities and challenges facing the region. And why does Toronto Pearson care about these issues? Well, to put it simply, we believe that our airport should lift more than just planes. Come on, I worked really hard on that line for a long time. Come on. And so we show up to talk about regional transit, we show up to talk about regional economic development, and we'll keep showing up to talk to each of you about how Pearson is creating benefits that reach far beyond our hometown of Mississauga and North Etobicoke. You've heard me speak at previous ULI dinners about the opportunity to connect the region through a transit center at Pearson. So guess what? I'm going to talk about it again. And I'm delighted to say that under the leadership of Ministers Mulroney and Surma, we continue to make progress on advancing transit connections like Eglinton Crosstown West Extension that will help connect not only the airport employment zone and the hard-working employment lands that ring the airport, but also bringing transit to priority neighborhoods that surround the airport, Malton, Albion, Rexdale, and more. So I hope all of you will continue to support ULI and join us for important conversations like this. We are so excited to host Spring 2020 here in Toronto. Bring your hand sanitizer, it's on, people. And it's time for our region to take center stage on the world stage. I know I'm a poet. I'm gonna turn it over to, nope, I'm just gonna wrap it up. Richard says we're out. Everybody have a great evening, get home safely.